Good morning, boys and girls. Today we are going to do lesson 15-3, Analyze and Compare Quadrilaterals. But before we get started with our lesson, I wanted us to make a nice little chart that's going to help us understand our quadrilaterals a little bit better. So this is what we're going to end up with. I wanted to give you a little peek at it. And we're going to work it together. So I need you to stop the video and go get a piece of notebook paper if you don't already have it, or a piece of copy paper, and get ready to listen. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start with the word quadrilaterals at the top. The reason we're putting quadrilaterals at the top is that all of these shapes that we are going to be talking about today are quadrilaterals. So at the very top, I'm going to write the word quadrilaterals. Quadrilaterals, long word, quadrilaterals. So all of these are quadrilaterals. Now, I'm going to show you a few here. This is a quadrilateral. This is a quadrilateral. This one. And this one, here's a few examples of quadrilaterals. What do you notice about all of these shapes? Well, if you said that they are polygons, remember a closed shape that has four sides, you're absolutely correct. So that's what we're going to start with right now, is we're going to write the definition of all quadrilaterals. So a quadrilateral is a polygon with four sides. Okay, so all quadrilaterals are going to be polygons. That means closed shape, and they have four straight sides. Now, when we look at quadrilaterals, we can separate them into groups because some of them share the same characteristics. Well, the first thing I wanted to talk about, and we're going to start with the center line, right about underneath the hole in the center, is we're going to talk about a group that's called parallelograms. All right, so over here we're going to write parallelograms. Parallelograms. Okay, so we're going to have parallelograms right here. And what is a parallelogram? Well, a parallelogram is opposite sides are the same length and are parallel. All right, so let's see, what's an example of a parallelogram? Well, this is a parallelogram. So you'll see that the opposite sides are the same length and they're parallel. Remember, parallel means that they would, if they continued on and on, these two, the lines, if we continued the lines out, would never cross. They would never meet. So that makes it parallel. So I'm going to draw a parallelogram right here. So I'm going to have a straight line across, and then this one's going to be a straight line across. I tried to make them about the same size, and then I'm going to connect them. So in this case, I just connected them with the slant line. Doesn't matter as long as these two lines are the same length and parallel, and these two are. So parallelogram is opposite sides are the same length and parallel. All right, so remember, what does parallel mean? Parallel means that they are never going to cross, lines that will never cross. So I'm going to go and put that up here to remind you that parallel means lines that never cross. All right, so And parallelogram, the root word is parallel, having lines that never cross. Now, another thing that we know about parallelograms is that the opposite angles are going to be the same size. Because of the way the lines are parallel and meet, the opposite angles are always the same size. So that's what we're going to write next, right over here. Opposite angles are the same size. All right, so all of these shapes that are parallelograms, they're all quadrilaterals, but they also have opposite angles are the same size. Now, from there, we're going to talk about some very specific parallelograms. So one example that we have is the rhombus. All right, and I'm going to show you a rhombus. This is a rhombus. Now, a rhombus has all four sides that are the same length. So on a rhombus, this line, this one, and this one, they're each the same length. So I'm going to draw my rhombus here real quick. You'll notice it looks a lot like that one up there. All right, good. Quick job, pretty good. All right, so all four sides are the same length. And that's what a rhombus is. All four sides are the same length. Now, if we have all four sides of the same length, we have another type of parallelogram also. And this one is, and you're going to notice this one right off the bat, a rectangle. Now, a rectangle. I'm going to draw one real quick because I know that y'all are all quite familiar with what a rectangle is, how it looks. So a rectangle has four right angles. So I'm going to have to write kind of small, has four right angles. Sometimes we call them a corner square or square corner. So I'm going to show you those four right angles is we could take the corner and make a square in that corner because the sides are straight. They're two sets of parallel lines because remember, opposite sides are the same length. This one's the same length as this one. This one's the same length as this one. And the opposite angles are the same size. All right, so now from a rectangle and a rhombus, there's another very special shape that is both a rhombus and a rectangle. Do you know what it is? It's a square. So we're going to write square right down here in the middle. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line down from rhombus across for the square and connect it up to a rectangle. Now, a square, let me draw my little square. I know you know the characteristics of a square. We have all four sides are the same length. And it has four right angles. All right, so I actually probably should have switched those words over, but it's already there, so that's okay. So a square is a special kind of rectangle and a special kind of rhombus, which since a square is the same as a rectangle and a rhombus because of the qualifications, they are also parallelograms, and they fall under the big term quadrilaterals because they have four sides. Now, I'm going to show you our little corners here because they have 4 right angles. And the other part is that all the sides are the same length, just like in a rhombus. So all of the sides are the same length on a rhombus. And all the sides are the same length on a square, all 4 of them. So see, the square has the same length, sides, and it has all right angles, which makes it qualify for both of those. But now there's another shape that's a quadrilateral that we haven't talked about, and that is this one, the trapezoid. Now, the trapezoid is a quadrilateral, but it is not a parallelogram, because a parallelogram has to have opposite sides of the same length and parallel. So when I look at a trapezoid, I can see the top, on this situation, the top and bottom line are parallel. They will never cross. But the sides, if we extended those lines, they would definitely be crossing. So it is not a parallelogram. So I'm going to write my trapezoid over here. Oops, wrong pen. Hold on, please. And our trapezoid, it is a quadrilateral because it does have 4 sides, but it's not a parallelogram because it does not have 2 pairs of parallel sides. So here's my trapezoid, and when we write about our trapezoid, we're going to write has exactly 1 pair of sides that are parallel. And do you remember what parallel means? That means that they never cross. So in this situation, it only has 1 pair of sides that are parallel. And then I'm going to write never cross. So let's look on this one. This line is parallel to this line because if we were to extend them across, they would extend them on each side, they would never cross. That makes it a trapezoid. So it is a quadrilateral, but it is not a parallelogram. So we can sort shapes by different attributes, and these are some of the ones that we're going to be using today in our lesson. So therefore, once you've made that, keep it handy because we're going to be referring back to it. Now let's look at our lesson. All right, we're at 15.3, and we are describing at least 2 attributes that are the same in all or some of these shapes. Describe 2 attributes that are different. So we're going to tell 2 things about these shapes that are the same and 2 things that are different. So let's take a look. First of all, the same. So I'm going to write same. What do you notice about all these shapes? That's right. They all have 4 sides. So all of these shapes have 4 sides. They are all quadrilaterals. Another thing is that the same is that all the shapes have 4 angles. So they all have 4 angles. Remember, the angle is where the 2 lines meet. It's the vertice, and it's that space between line to line. So that's our angle. Here's our vertice where they join, and our angle is where they meet. They all have 4 angles, and they all have 4 sides. So what's something that's different? Well, let's take a look. Now, it says about all or 2, or some of them. So let's look at different. So when I look and I see something that's different, I can see that, let's see, shapes A and B are the only shapes with two pairs of sides or lines that do not cross. So A and B have two pairs of sides that are, what's that word? Parallel. So shapes A and B have two sets of parallel lines. All right, but what's something else that's different? Well, let's look at shapes C and D. So here's C and here's D. C and D are the only shapes with just one pair of sides or lines that do not cross. So C and D only have one pair of parallel lines. So shapes C and D have only one set of parallel lines. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and turn over on the back and look at the way they're going to shape some and see their examples. Alright, so what are the different ways you can classify the quadrilaterals shown below? Remember, quadrilaterals have four sides. They also have differences, so you can classify them into smaller groups. So they've got them labeled for us, and the first thing I notice is that all of these shapes are quadrilaterals, but only one of them is a concave shape. The others are convex. And this one, do you see how it kind of caves in toward the center of the shape? It is a concave shape. But let's see how they sorted our shapes. Shapes B, D, E, and G. It says they are also parallelograms. All of these are parallelograms. Remember, our parallelogram, opposite angles are the same size, opposite sides are the same size and length, and they're parallel. Each has two pairs of sides that have the same length. Shapes D, E, and G are also rectangles. So D, E, and G, not only are they parallelograms, they are rectangles. So remember, we have their parallelograms, but they're also rectangles. Now look at that. This is, remember, a very special rectangle called a square. And then shapes B and D are parallelograms that are also rhombuses. Each has four equal length sides. Notice that that square is a rectangle and that square is a rhombus. Square can be a rectangle or a rhombus because it has both of those characteristics. Shape D is a square and is in every group. It is a quadrilateral, it is a parallelogram, a rectangle, and a rhombus. Now, let's look at our next page. And it's going to be referring back to the previous page. So let's put them side by side. And it says, which shape on the previous page is a rhombus but not a rectangle? Which one's a rhombus but not a rectangle? Remember, a rectangle has 4 right angles. That means the sides are straight. So when we look at them, which one's a rhombus but not a rectangle? Shape B. Because it has exactly 4 sides, all the same length, but it does not have any right angles. But it does not have any right angles. So remember, a rectangle has to have those little square corners on the inside, the right angles. Number 2, can you have a square trapezoid? Is there any way for our square to be a trapezoid? If you answered no, that would be correct. No, a square cannot be a trapezoid because a trapezoid only has one set of parallel lines, but a square has two. So no, a trapezoid has only one pair of parallel sides and a square has two pairs of parallel sides. So it cannot be a trapezoid. So looking at our square, these two lines are parallel, these two lines are parallel, but on a trapezoid, we only have one set. So number 3, which shapes on the previous page are not a parallelogram, rectangle, rhombus, or square? So if it's not a parallelogram, rhombus, rectangle, or square, that means we know that it's not. So we know that B is a parallelogram, D is a parallelogram, E is a parallelogram, F is a parallelogram, G is a parallelogram. So if those are the ones that are parallelograms, which one are not? Which ones did we not cross off? Well, it would be shapes A, what other one? C, and we have H and I. Those shapes are not parallelograms. So number 4, what attributes does a square have because it is also a rectangle? So what is the same about that square and rectangle? Look back at our chart. What was the same thing? It has what? 4 right angles. So the square has 4 right angles. All right, so let's take a look at the bottom part of our sheet. It says list all the polygons shown at the right that fit each description. And if there could be no such polygon, tell why. I think they're trying to check to make sure you understand about polygons and quadrilaterals. Let's check it out and see. It says, is not a parallelogram. So we're going to look for the shapes that are not parallelogram. Well, I'll look at A. I can see that I have 2 pairs of parallel sides. That one's a parallelogram. B. These 2 are parallel, but look. The top and bottom on B are not parallel. If I extended those lines like this, what happens? They would eventually meet way down here. So B is not a parallelogram. Let's see what's next. Oh, C, look at that. We can see these are already about to meet. C is not a parallelogram. As a matter of fact, it doesn't have any parallel sides. Let's see if there's another one. D. Well, D is a parallelogram because it's a square. D, E. E. Oh my goodness, look. We know these are not going to be a parallelogram because look at E. Those lines are going to cross if we extend them. So we have E. E is not a parallelogram. F is a parallelogram. X is a rectangle. And G. These 2 lines are parallel. These 2 lines are parallel. So those are the shapes that are not parallelograms. Remember, parallelogram has to have 2 sets of parallel lines. All right, number 6 is a quadrilateral but not a parallelogram or trapezoid. So which shape is a quadrilateral? It's going to be a quadrilateral, but it is not a parallelogram or a trapezoid? Let's see. A, nope. A, we already said is a, oh, you know what? If it's not a parallelogram, all we have to do is look at these three. So we've got B. Well, B, in order to be a trapezoid, it has to have one pair of lines that are parallel. And guess what? It does. These two side lines, they're parallel, so it's not B. Let's see. Check out C. Oh my goodness, look. That was the one that we said had no parallel lines. So C is a quadrilateral, but it is not a parallelogram or a trapezoid. Let's check out E. E, oh look, the E, we have one set of parallels, so E is a trapezoid. So our answer here is C. It's not a parallelogram, and it's not a trapezoid. Now let's look at number 7. Is a square, so it says list the shape that's a square but not a parallelogram. Boys and girls, this is one of those trick questions. Take a look at this. Do you see the square? Is it a parallelogram? Is there any way for a square not to be a parallelogram? No. So this is one of those that there's not a shape. So we're going to write, there can be no such polygon. Because squares are parallelograms. I love this little chart so we can clearly see that a square is a parallelogram. So there is no such polygon with those characteristics. All right, number 8 is a rhombus and not a rectangle. Is a rhombus but not a rectangle. Now a rhombus, remember, let's look at our thing. A rhombus is all 4 sides are the same length. And notice that a rhombus does not have right angles. So we're looking for a shape or shapes like this one. So all 4 are the same length and they're parallel. So let's see, is A is definitely a rhombus, 2 pairs of parallel lines, but there's no right angles. So shape A, now we don't need to look at B, C, and E because we already said B, C, and E are not parallelograms, and we know a rhombus is a parallelogram. Well, D is a square. It is a parallelogram. It is not a rhombus because it has right angles. F, we know, it says not a rectangle. F is a rectangle. And G, here we have G. G does not have all sides the same length, so it can't be a rhombus. So our only answer is A. Number 9 is a parallelogram and not a rhombus. A parallelogram but not a rhombus. So A, we said A is a rhombus, so we know it can't be that one. B, well, B is not a parallelogram, neither is C. D, let's look at D. It says a parallelogram but not a rhombus. Now remember, a rhombus is a square and D is a square, so that one is definitely a rhombus, so it can't be D. And then again, E is not a parallelogram at all. So then we have F. F is not a rhombus and it is a parallelogram. So F is one of those shapes. It's a parallelogram, but it's not a rhombus because all of its sides are not the same length. G. Oh, look. G also is a parallelogram, but it is not a rhombus because these lines are longer than those. So it's F and G. This chart is going to come in handy. If you didn't make it at the beginning, you need to make sure you go back and make you one. Start that over and make you one. Let's turn it over to the very back, and we're going to hop all the way down to the bottom. It says, look at these polygons. We got 4 polygons, A, B, C, and D. They're polygons because they're closed shapes. Part A, name one attribute that all 4 polygons have. What's the same about all 4 of these polygons? If you said they are all quadrilaterals and have 4 sides, you are absolutely right. They are all quadrilaterals because they have 4 sides. Now it says name an attribute that both A and D have that B and C do not. Well, let's take a look. I can see that both A and D, they have 2 pairs of parallel lines, but C only has 1 pair and B only has 1 pair. So we're going to say both A and D have 2 pairs of parallel lines that, look, I noticed too, are the same length. So B and C do not. Now, boys and girls, we're going to go over real quick, if I can find it, our homework for tonight. Here it is. Had a lot of papers today. So for 15-3, you're going to do number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then on the back, only number 10. All right, now remember, go back, make this chart. You're going to need it for your test also next week. So it's really important. I think it'll help you a lot. Have a great day, boys and girls.